Hi everyone, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks. So today I'm giving you a full tank review on this monstrosity. It's the Object 283. It's a tier 9 Soviet medium tank, and currently the only way that you're able to get your hands on this is by spending your tokens that you get from playing, or by turning some of your resources from the holiday ops into more chances to be able to get the tank. You got like a 1 in 10 chance of being able to get 5 rentals of the vehicle, and there's no official wargaming yet as to what your actual chances of getting the vehicle permanently. I think I've spent about 30 or 40 tokens inside the gift terminal, and I've only managed to get 1 set of rental tanks, which means that I'm unlucky. Accordingly, I haven't been able to play this thing on my main account all that much, and it also means that because I don't have it as a permanent tank, that I haven't been able to actually get any of the field mods. I understand that this vehicle's been in the game for a few weeks now, and so a lot of you might have been thinking, why didn't QB review it? Well, I wanted to give Wargaming enough time to maybe try and make up for their terrible mistake of how they've released this vehicle. Seeing how they haven't, and their complete lack of care, and how they think that it's completely acceptable for the 283 to go into the game effectively with just complete RNG chance as to whether you can get the hand on it. I'm done waiting. I'm just going to give this thing a tank review, let you know how the vehicle is. But if you want to know my full opinion on the Object 283 and how Wargaming released this, then you can check my video from a couple of weeks ago, which has actually ended up with a lot of views and a lot of likes on it. So thank you very much for your feedback, community. So it's really hard to decide what to compare the Object 283 to. The only other true rear-mounted medium tank at tier 9 is going to be the Object 432, and so I feel like that's a good starting area. Now, no one really raves about the Object 432 or thinks it's a fantastic tank. Maybe if you are, let me know in the comments. But for me personally, I just think the lack of gun depression on the vehicle and the fact that the gun doesn't really feel that special in 2022 means that, look, if the Object 283 doesn't completely smash the Object 432, that should give you a blooming good idea of what this vehicle is, or not what this vehicle is all about, but how competitive this tank is. So let's check out the firepower for the Object 283. It has a 100mm caliber gun. However, not all 100mm caliber guns in World of Tanks hit the same amount, and this 100mm caliber gun has 360 alpha damage, which is 40 higher than on the Object 432. And while its damage per minute is not awful, 2,300 is really not special for tier 9 medium. In addition to this relatively poor damage per minute, 226mm of penetration on its standard rounds is not special at all. However, it can load gold that has 300mm of penetration, which again is disappointing when we consider that the 432 gets access to 330mm of high explosive anti-tank rounds like on the T54. One thing that is nice on this vehicle, however, is it carries 50 rounds of ammunition, and because it hits harder than the 432, that is more than enough to get through the majority of the battle, and you won't usually be running out of AP or heat rounds. And considering how much better the penetration is on your heat than 226 at tier 9, which really doesn't cut it on a lot of vehicles, then yeah, you're going to want a lot of heat rounds and AP rounds depending on what kind of a matchup you're in. Alright, so we found out it doesn't really have the best firepower. Now let's take a look at the gun handling. 2.5 seconds aim time is not good. 0.38 accuracy is not good. And the dispersion values are, yeah, you guessed it, not good. Meaning that you're probably going to want to end up taking vertical stabilizers on this tank. And even if you do, that poor aim time is going to mean that you're still struggling to be able to get that pineapple reticle in. And the 0.38 accuracy, that's not cool. One thing that's fairly nice about this tank, though, is 6 degrees of gun depression. It's the same as the T54, as if the T54 was using the gun that leads on towards the Object 140, and it definitely trumps the 432 with this regard. And, unlike the 432, the turret on the Object 283 is fully traversable, so you're going to be able to turn it all the way around, and you've even got 6 degrees of gun depression at the back of the tank, which is always handy. Now let's go on to the mobility of this vehicle. 50 forwards, not special. However, the power to weight ratio of 17.89 is pretty good. However, the ground resistances on this tank are massively worse than something like the Object 432, which actually means this vehicle ends up being very slow on soft and medium terrain, not even able to get up to its 50 kilometers an hour top speed limit on medium terrain, unlike the Object 432. Luckily, the turret traverse and the tank traverse on this vehicle are 40 and 50 degrees respectively, and that's decent. You've got enough mobility there. Alright, so let's take a look at the armor, and wow, this is where it looks like it's actually really good news for the Object 283. 190 at the front, 80 at the side, means this will be very good for side scraping, and 250 and 150 on the turret. Very nice indeed. And when we take a look at how this armor model works against 226mm of penetration, we can see that it's actually a weird one. Because of the shape of this lower plate, it's very convex. The last thing that you want to do when you're shooting at this tank is actually shoot at the lower plate, unless of course you've got high explosive anti-tank rounds or you're underneath the vehicle, and then you can definitely take advantage of that. So you actually want to aim for the mid plate on this vehicle, which is quite weird, as most tanks don't have nearly as good armor on the lowest part of the lower plate. So shoot this thing in the middle. When you're side scraping in this vehicle, however, it is very nice indeed. Now your opponents have little chance with a very lovely angling across the top. So if you're shooting at this thing from the side and you see it over angling, make sure you shoot right through the tracks, hopefully bypassing them, and don't shoot the angled upper hull of this tank, otherwise you're going to struggle. When it's side scraping like this, you don't really stand too much chance at 226. However, if you load heat, you're going to be able to shoot the upper part of its hull here and catch anything around the front. Turret-wise, AP, very good, 250 millimeters of protection, but as soon as your opponents have got 300 millimeters, then they're easily able to go through your turret. So watch out for that. It is just a generic side scraper, and while its armor is good for a tier 9 medium, it's not good when you compare it to some of the tier 9 heavies that this vehicle is going to be competing against. Apart from that, the vehicle has a very generic 1,600 hit points, and one thing that's really disappointing is the tank's 380 meters view range, which means that if you're a free-to-play player, if you don't use coated optics on this tank, you are really going to struggle with the vehicle's view range. However, if you're pay to win and you've managed to get yourself a good Soviet medium tank crew, you're probably not going to have too many issues. Crew-wise on this vehicle, it uses a very generic setup with the commander who also functions as the radio operator, and you've got a gunner, a driver, and a loader. This means that irrelevant of which one of the 4 tech tree Soviet medium tanks that you have, you are going to be able to use your crew inside this vehicle. Equipment wise, I'm personally taking vent, a gun ram, and vertical stabilizers on the Object 283, but let me clarify, with that setup I can only get 440 meters view range, and so I would recommend on certain maps, if you manage to get this thing as a non-rental and you have the luxury of being able to have the third field mod, which allows you to use 2 sets of equipment, then you might want to drop one of those modules to use coated optics so you can be a more proficient scout. And dude, it kind of pains me thinking about maybe using coated optics and a vision system and vents on this tank and having to sacrifice the DPM altogether. Field mods wise, let me clarify that I haven't actually managed to play the tank with them, but I can tell you what I would recommend anyway. First one, I would definitely take the durability because this vehicle has no traverse problems. Next one, I'd recommend taking the accuracy, improved sight. I'd follow that up. This one's a little bit more tricky. If you really want to be stealthy, take the camo. If not, and you feel like this is more of a brawling medium tank, which I think it is. I think it's more of a brawling medium tank than a sniping one. You might want to end up taking the reverse speed and the suspension repair speed, but be warned that it will make you very bad at staying hidden at decent distances. And for the final one, I would probably recommend losing 30 hit points to be able to improve the vehicle's aim time, or just not take one at all. Or if you want to be really durable and you don't feel like your aim time's a problem on this tank, because hopefully you're using vertical stabilizers, then you could boost the hit points. All in all though, really disappointing field mods for this tank. It doesn't really change anything about it and add too much flavor to the vehicle. And with all that said and done, I think that's quite enough yapping. Let's get stuck into some gameplay. And this is going to be an interesting one. That is because, do you see what account I'm playing on? I'm actually playing on my Plays for Free account. This is going to be a first for my YouTube channel where I'm actually reviewing a tank from my Plays for Free account. And do you know why that is? I think my Plays for Free account has like 15 or 20 rentals of this vehicle, even though I've used the same amount of tokens, whereas my main account didn't actually get rentals of the vehicle until I think it was Christmas Eve. So yeah, thanks Wargaming for that, making your system of dispersion or distribution, I should say, of this vehicle so darn random that I ended up not actually getting rentals of it until like 2 or 3 weeks into the actual blooming event. My free-to-play account, however, managed to get the rentals of it fairly quickly. And of course, as soon as I got it, I christened it, and this will be the very first game that you see in the tank. One thing I'd like to immediately highlight is, well, firstly, that you're going to be playing without premium consumables. I think I'm using vents, gun rammer, and coated optics on this build because my view range would have been too horrendous otherwise. One thing I'd like to highlight is that when you hear this vehicle reload, just wait for it. But you'll hear that it actually sounds like it's an autoloader reloading, or an auto reloader reloading, which is very weird. So I wonder if the early versions of this tank, the tank actually had an autoloader or an auto reloader. And instead, we've kind of ended up with this Frankenstein version of the vehicle, which I'm not sure if it's just a bug, if Wargaming plan to fix it, or if it's some kind of nod to some kind of history of the vehicle. But it definitely has the sound of an auto reloader or an autoloader when it's reloading. I'll see if I can keep quiet for you in just a few seconds, but listen to it. Listen to it now. I'll keep quiet. Sound that? That is not a normal reload on a single shot gun, a single shot 100mm like this. In this kind of situation, I'm going to say I really like this vehicle. You know, you've got that decent frontal armor. You don't mind taking chances. Maybe if the M103 comes around the corner, maybe I even ricochet him. This vehicle has just got kind of sometimes works armor. And when you've got sometimes works armor, that can allow you to be cheeky. And so in that situation, if I was playing another medium tank like a T-54 or definitely a 432, if those heavies come around the corner, I am toast. Whereas in this tank, as long as I can keep my front towards my opponent, I can end up being a little bit cheeky. And when I can be cheeky, that hopefully means that I'm going to be able to get some damage in. So in this situation, I lose my fuel tanks. I do repair them, but I really didn't need to, considering that this is my free-to-play account. Luckily, the Progetto whiffs his second shell into my gun, and that is it. And that shows you how good the power-to-weight ratio is on this vehicle. The 17.89 power-to-weight ratio, as long as you're on hard terrain like I am here, you can bully mediums in that situation. There's no way that Progetto should have ever gone into the center of the map to try and pick a fight with an Object 283. Although, let me also clarify that usual 283 drivers right now are a little bit awful. That's because a lot of players who are playing them are sometimes, you know, your low-tier players who get it as a reward think, oh wow, I've got this special reward, I'm going to play it. And so they probably put in a crew from some kind of Soviet tank. Maybe they don't have any of the Soviet mediums. And probably drive around the battlefield with like a 50% crew or a 75% crew or something, or at least 100% crew. But if it doesn't have all of the crew skills, or maybe they're just not used to playing high tiers, there's no wonder why they're a little bit weak inside this tank. So I'm loading heat now against this Carnarvon. It'll give me an advantage now I've got rid of the wall. And do you see how the damage in this tank actually does add up? I kind of like the 360 alpha of this vehicle. And we're already up to 3,000 damage in the first 4 minutes of this battle. It does feel nicer to have 360 than 320 on a 703-2, for example. My free-to-play account has currently been working its way through a 703-2, and boy have I been struggling with that tank. I haven't really found a place on the battlefield. Sure, you can kind of side-scrape in that vehicle, but that lack of gun depression, 6 degrees feeling just so much better on this vehicle than the 4 degrees that the 432 will have. It's just been holding me back so much. So in this scenario, we've managed to hold the middle, breach out the east, and now hopefully we can flank around and get into the classic side-scraping position and go after the Conqueror in the E75. Luckily, I do have a decent crew on my Object 140, I believe, on my 430U that I'm using on this tank, and that allows me to intuition switch to an AP round to be able to deliver a round to the turret of the Conqueror. Well, that just shows you that the gun handling on this vehicle is awful, and because I'm on my free-to-play account, I'm not using vert stabs. I feel like, for me personally, Vent's gun rammer and coated optics will be better on this tank for me and my playstyle until I can have 2 sets of equipment. And then, of course, I'll probably drop the coated optics to use vert stabs instead on these kind of city maps. But again, Wargaming, how awful are you that you gave everyone this vehicle as a rental and we can't even blooming unlock field mods on it? So you're telling us that we're just never going to be as competitive? I mean, how stupid can you be, Wargaming? Seriously. You give everyone a rental, up to about 50 plays in this battle, more than enough to get multiple field mods, and everybody knows how important it is to have field mods on tanks to be able to have 2 sets of equipment, and you can't even bloomin' have it. I understand that Wargaming have made it so that rentals can't get field mods so that people don't feel that they're getting ripped off with the credits or ripped off with the experience. But Wargaming, newsflash, if you're going to screw people over when you put vehicles into a game with some kind of random loot box mechanics, and people are going to get up to like 50 or 100 rentals of the vehicle, this ain't like when you give people 5 rentals of a Carnarvon Action 10. Let the people make their own decision with regards to whether they want to unlock the field mods on the rental or not. And it should be functionality for everyone. And I'm going to be annoyed about it. And I can imagine that there are players out there as well, I'm not particularly one of them, who try to play for marks of excellence. because people who play for Marks of Excellence are going to want to have the field mods to feel like they can be competitive on a tank and be able to play it. Some people who go for their third Mark of Excellence, you know, you've got to start to actually be you've got to be fairly competitive, right? And not having the field mods on this tank will definitely stop you from doing so, and maybe that's the kind of like the 2 or the 3% advantage that will change you. Talking about change me, man, those 2 shots, do you see how they can shoot me right in the side there, just twice along the upper hull? Definitely changed the scope of this game. And it shows you that while this vehicle can side scrape, whether its armor works or not is another question. And this AMX M451 just smashed me hard. Luckily, I'm not wasting my repair kit on my fuel tanks this time. I do have my fire extinguisher still. And unless I have some downtime in the battle where I think I'm going to have like another 90 seconds or so, I don't think it'd be worth it. Let's talk about this battle right now. It's funny, we are even on tanks, but we're actually down by 3,500 hit points. So even though it looks like we're safe, oh, we ain't safe. And I just gotta hope that that tortoise remains passive around the corner, because they could literally end the game in a heartbeat. Look at this. Everyone on my team is a one-shot. Literally, apart from the Borask, everyone on my team is a one-shot. So if that tortoise would just come round, maybe we'd be okay. So you can see now I repair my fuel tanks, and the reason for that is I've got 404 hit points. Maybe I get low rolled or just regular rolled by any of the enemy team, and if they also set me on fire, I might not be quick enough with the manual fire extinguisher, and you know what, even an automatic fire extinguisher might not be quick enough to be able to stop me from losing those few extra hit points that might end up in my tank's destruction. So if you think that you have kind of like 90 seconds or at least a minute to be able to repair your fuel tanks, I would thoroughly recommend that you do when you're in these kind of situations where you're a one-shot with a fire. Or at least when you're in a 50-50 scenario, maybe the enemies can low roll in that scenario. Okay, so we're up to a very respectable amount of damage and combined here with the assistance, and I'm telling this Borask that I'm going to help him, and I'm going to ping the other side to hope that the Borask tries to flank him here, but luckily for me, the Conqueror, who's proxy spotted by the Borask, doesn't proxy spot me, and I managed to finish them off, and I give the Borask a thumbs up. And slowly but surely, this game's actually starting to look a little bit more safe. The Borask managed to pick up a kill, I picked up a kill, I think the BZ-176 picked up a kill in the town, and suddenly we are back in this game. We're still down on hit points, they have over double our hit points, but in some kind of bizarre turn of events, it's now in a 3 versus 7 scenario. And when you've got more guns in the game, it can be fairly intimidating for your opponents, and not just intimidating, it could also mean that you have better angles on your opponents, and it's more risky for them to be able to push because they're pushing into a crossfire. Unfortunately, the M103 on our team gets shut down by the Lerva, and I'm thinking, shall we just cap out here, or shall we try and make a flanking play? I don't think capping out when the Tortoise is literally free to just cross and be able to come around the corner and shut me down is the best play. So instead, I'm thinking, let's hunt. Let's go after this T103 and see if we can be able to pick them apart. So I'm hoping that he gets caught, and oh baby, oh, feels good moment with the T103 just not looking at me. And they're not even turning their hull and their turret in the same way, and so we get a free second shot, up to 4,800. And I have to admit, side scraping in this tank does feel really good, just not when the AMX M451 is getting you. And the DPM, it's not great, but it's not bad. And I really feel like this 360 alpha damage does feel like a pretty nice sweet spot on this tank. And I wouldn't complain about the alpha damage and DPM combo on it. So the Lerva shuts down our 112, I shut down the T103, and it's now in a 2 versus 5. But once again, the opponents still have 50% more hit points than us, so we're going to have to watch out for them. Okay, not any longer though, with the BZ-176 shutting down the Lerva. Now it's a 4 versus 1 scenario. Ooh, make that oh, it's still a 4 versus 1, as the Tortoise is trying to get a Kolobanov's medal in this situation. Now, spoilers. I'm on my free-to-play account, and I'm going to spam gold here against this Tortoise. And let's just count how many credits this costs me. The regular rounds on this tank are expensive enough at 1,200 for 360 alpha, but the premium rounds are going to be like 4,500 credits. And just look at how this accuracy feels. Now, of course, it would get a little bit better with the field mod. It would get way better if I also had a premium consumable. But let's take a look at this. This is 300 pen. Okay. That's kind of a bit of a misplay by me. I guess I should be aiming slightly towards the left where you actually see the guns. Okay, fully aimed, fully aimed. Okay, right on the side, another heat round bounce. I guess I should have maybe aimed towards the center once again. We're going to try again. And I'm actually making a little bit of a misplay here because I'm shooting to the right of the Tortoise, thinking that it was a bit of a weak point. But you think that 300 millimeters of heat pen would be able to handle it, right? finally one of my shells actually manages to go in. And I can tell you, the gun handling and aim time on this tank, even when you make small movements, does feel really awkward. And you can see that I'm aiming now just towards the left. But with the way that the tortoise is angling, I don't think I've ever had such an awkward situation where I've just got to free farm and the shell goes super far to the left because I'm now trying to aim to the left where the two little machine gun ports come out. Maybe I can just shoot this guy in the side. Oh well, I guess if you just you throw enough darts, you'll eventually get the get it in the triple 20, right? Luckily for me, we do. Oh my lord, this is getting very expensive now. I think I've spent something like about 40,000 credits trying to take out this tortoise. Ah, finally that one goes in, and that's a high roll for 429. Still got 21 more hit points to deal with. Maybe I could even load an HE round in this scenario. Hey, finally. Yeah, that was a huge first game for the Object 283 as we smashed down 6,600 damage and 900 assistance and 4 kills in the first ever game I played in this tank. In this kind of a scenario where you are ending up against equal tier tanks and your armor does work, and you know, you get limited amounts of bad RNG where they do hit you in the side and you get to make some flanking plays. Look, it's a tier 9 medium tank. It ain't bad. Does it do anything completely different to all of the other medium tanks in the game? Well, maybe with regards to its side-scraping ability, but I can tell you, its gun is not different at all. And what I mean by that is, this ain't a special 100mm gun, not by a long shot. So now I'm playing on my main account, and once again, this will be the first ever game that I've played in this tank, at least on my main account. However, I did have one more game of training from my Plays for Free account, right? This time, as you can see, I'm using a premium consumable. My crew will be slightly better. And I'm not using coated optics, which kind of sucks considering I'm playing on proper Rovka. But you've got to take what you think is going to be best for the situation. And for me, considering I can get up to 440 meters view range, I think 440 will still be just about enough. I mean, I'd love to have 460 with a vision system, especially on a map like this. And if I had the vehicle set up correctly, I would do that. I would take vents, coated optics, vision system for a map like this, because there's no point of improving relatively poor damage per minute if you don't actually get to spot your opponents to be able to use it, or even spot for your team to be able to use it. Look at this speed getting into position here, 40 kilometers an hour. I'm sure I'm not using a turbo on this tank, but it really shows you that as soon as you're off like the hard terrain, like Runeberg that we saw on the previous map, yo, this tank ain't fast. Luckily for me, I'm seeing another Soviet Tier 9 vehicle, this time the Object 257 Heavy, caught down in position, and with a quick intuition switch, now I'm going to start to carve up their hit point. One round in, gun ram events here coming in handy. Second round, not quite, as they managed to lunge their way into the dip. So in this situation, I was thinking, oh boy, I really want to farm this tank. There was a lot of pressure on me. It took me about 2 weeks to be able to get the tokens to finally get this vehicle as a rental. And so I didn't really want to mess up my first game in it. The Skoda T50 said that they were going to go in, and I don't really want to go all the way. I want to just get enough so I can shoot, but I actually want to stay above. And so you'll see that I missed the shot, and even the 6 degrees of gun depression doesn't quite work. But now I realize that with the Skoda T50 reloading, I have to be here to finish off the kill, because otherwise the Skoda T50 is going to get shut down by the 257, as they will be reloading. So it looks like another 257 is arriving. I have a quick look to see whether they were a platoon or not. It doesn't seem to be the case. We're going to be pre-aimed for this shot here, and I have to admit, vert stabs, do you notice how much better the gun handling is now? It will also be a case of using the premium consumable with that 5% extra accuracy, but yeah, vert stabs on this tank definitely makes this poor aim time and poor accuracy a little bit more manageable. And I don't know what this 257 is doing. Looks like Wargaming paid enough actors at least, probably with all the proceeds that they've got from their player base, all of their very loyal tank collectors gambling in loot crates to be able to get the resources to be able to then gamble inside their one-armed slot machine to be able to undoubtedly never get this thing as a permanent but always get it as a rental. Yeah, hopefully they'll be slipping some of that my way, right? I'm not gonna let this down, and the fact that Wargaming have not said anything after clearly the community is quite concerned about the release of this vehicle, and it's more about the principle that as a tank collector, is it really right that there should be a tank which you stand not very much hope in getting, even if you were to spend $4,000 on loot crates, like that gentleman did that I showed in my video, who has 225 rentals of the vehicle, but will never have access to the field mods on it. Honestly, how silly can Wargaming be? And how silly can they be to have not actually come up with a statement of intent for this vehicle to remedy the situation? They could fix it in so many ways. They could basically just say, okay, yeah, we goofed. Anyone who spent 50 tokens, you get the vehicle permanently. Fine. Okay, well done. It's not even that special of a tank. It's just a reward vehicle, Wargaming. It's not a tier 9 premium. What's it going to hurt if you actually are a little bit generous to your player base? At least the player base that logged in and played your game all the way through the Christmas period to be able to get it. Also, what Wargaming could have done is said, okay, we understand it. There was an oversight. We will have an event in 6 months, guaranteed, where you will have an opportunity to, I don't know, either purchase it, or maybe they could do like a little mini marathon with it. Just a very casual one inside a battle pass. It'd be such an easy situation to fix. And yet they just sit here and do nothing. And I understand it's the Christmas period and probably people have got more lives than I have. But also, when this is such a dangerous precedence to be able to set inside the game, I really do feel that with the weeks that have passed, that Wargaming have had an opportunity to do something about it. So, we're playing in the Object 283 now in a snipey situation. Again, not the best place to really have a tank with .38 base accuracy. I would have been able to improve that a little bit with the field mods, but for obvious reasons I haven't been able to do so. I'd like to clarify, in Wargaming's defense, they did give this tank to me on a press account. However, and obviously on a press account, I think it will be a permanent one, and so I could have played it with the field mods. But I decided that I wasn't going to play on the press account with this vehicle because, to all intents and purposes, hardly any of the player base might actually ever end up with getting this tank as a permanent thing. So why would I play this thing with the field mods? Why don't I experience the same effective pain and suffering, or frustration probably, that the rest of the player base is having to deal with this tank? And so I'm here with all of you, ladies and gents, boys and girls. I'm also very frustrated about getting slapped in the side by a Caliban there and a super high roll from an Object 257. That 257 has 440 alpha damage. It managed to hit me there for 540, and the Caliban followed it up with a 539 damage roll. Luckily, he who laughs last laughs hardest, and that's one round right through the Caliban, sending them back to the garage. And this is just what the Object 283 does. It's a fairly resilient tank, but its armor's not perfect. It has a fairly good gun and fairly good gun depression. It's a decent tank. It's not incredible in any area, but it's not terrible in any area. And oh, come on, baby, let's put one right into the back of this American Premium Heavy. Oh, yeah, as we shut down hydrogen on the enemy team playing their Renegade. And right now, it's kind of just me against the world here. At the top of this hill. And this is where, without the vision system and without coated optics, I just don't have the vision to be able to see most of these players going up into the bush. However, I can catch that leopard. Unfortunately, they catch me as well, and they reduce my hit points to a point where even an artillery splash could very easily send me back to the garage. With only 56 HP here, I'm a little bit concerned. I know that there's a T-95 chilling up here. I know that there's a Leopard prototype chilling up here. But it's just about hoping that the T-95, who was last spotted on 3/4 of their hit points, is going to make a bit of a boo-boo. So how do they have 2,000 HP? That must be using the durability module, as well as also taking the field mod that increases their hit points? See, I can't imagine doing that personally for me on the T-95. I think I would always improve the rate of fire. But they wanted to make their rate of fire worse, as far as I can remember, to be able to improve their HP. So we're up to a very healthy 5,800 combined here with 3 kills in the inaugural game of my Object 283 rental on my main account. Now you might be saying, oh QB, have you really only managed to get 5 rentals? Yeah, I spent about 30 or 40 tokens to be able to get my 5 rentals. That's the equivalent of getting, I should have had about 20 rentals by now, or 15 to 20 rentals for that kind of token expenditure. But what I'm doing now is I'm actually saving. And I think what I'll do next week is I'll just do 50 tokens at the same time. Because at least if I do 50 tokens at the same time, I'll feel as if I've got like, I think somebody worked it out for me in the comments. I think I'll have roughly about a 30% chance of getting the tank permanently, if my calculations are correct. However, many people inside the community are also suggesting that the rate is not 1 in 100 to be able to actually get the vehicle. They're suggesting it's more like 0.3% chance. And if that is the case, then yeah, I don't hold much hope of getting this vehicle. And it will definitely have major implications once we have more statistics as to whether I can actually recommend any of you to be tank collectors in World of Tanks. Talk about being tank collectors. Why am I not shooting at the leopard who was over on my side? And he manages to advance forwards. Luckily, we shut them down. I think I might have been on my desktop there or reading Twitch chat in that scenario. Either that or just very sleepy and bored. And okay, come on then, leopard. I got you, I got you, I got you. Oh, what? What? What was that? Should we watch that in slow motion again, boys and girls? Because I tell you what, this was a tilter. This was a tilter. I'll speed it up. And then let's watch this in super slow-mo. Super slow-mo as this leopard comes over the ridge, okay? I'm waiting, I'm waiting, I'm waiting. Okay, we've got the turret. I don't want to risk it against the turret. I want the hull. Aiming, aiming, aiming. Aim like about 10, 15 pixels over the ridge. What was that? Actually, what was that? Should we have a good laugh once again? This is just this is just World of Tanks things. This is just grade A World of Tanks things, really. What we'll do is we'll go into the third person and then we'll press this. We'll press and we'll watch it in 16 times slow motion speed here. Okay, somehow my shell just whizzes into the dirt. I legitimately don't understand how that shell goes like that when you take a look at the reticle. I'm aiming so much over the dirt and somehow, I guess I've just got like a bent barrel. And yeah, unfortunately that means that the leopard shuts me down, which really frustrated me at the time. Why? Because it's a rental. It's one of the only 5 games I've actually managed to get on this tank, and I was absolutely petrified that I wasn't going to get my ace tanker because of that horrendous modeling and terrible RNG. Luckily for me, however, it was an ace. Only 1,248 base experience, enough to be able to ace the Object 283 in what might be one of my only 5 games I ever get to play in this tank. And so the pressure was really on there. Look, this has probably been one of the most conflicted tank reviews I've ever had to do in World of Tanks. Firstly, the Object 283. It's not super special, it's not great, but it's not terrible. It's just one of those kind of tanks that you'll have in your garage and you'll occasionally play. And honestly, it can be taken, you should take it quite seriously when you fight one of these on the battlefield. Decent gun, decent DPM, just everything about the tank is decent. It doesn't have anything horrendous on this vehicle, unlike the Object 432, which almost has unplayable gun depression. However, on the other hand, there's nothing amazing about this tank either, which leaves me feeling perplexed, because it's not a super special tank. It's not a premium tank. Why would Wargaming make it so darn hard to be able to get this vehicle? My understanding is that Wargaming probably thought that this was the ultimate reward or the hook to be able to maximize the fear of missing out in the player base, to have to log in every day to be able to bloody go up into the salt mines, grind the salt, put the salt into the slot machine, and then have a tiny sodding chance of being able to get this tank. And congratulations to you, Wargaming. I hope you're happy. I hope you managed to get lots of players to log into World of Tanks throughout. I can tell you, however, that your lack of response and your lack of care for your player base, especially for your tank collectors and your biggest supporting customers over the years, might come back to haunt you. And accordingly, I'd say that this is possibly one of, if not the worst tanks that Wargaming has ever released, at least with regards to fairness and the prospects for you being a tank collector in the future. And so, ladies and gents, boys and girls, if you find yourself thinking, oh, I really want to be able to get an Object 238 permanently, maybe I'll just buy an extra 50 loot crates and hey, I'll have 5 extra tokens to be able to possibly get the vehicle. Don't be stupid. There are people out there who have spent thousands to be able to get this vehicle and only managed to get hundreds of rentals. Go check out my video if you want the full story on that, and don't become a mug like them. And Wargaming, you should be ashamed of yourself for this tank and the way that you've released it, and your lack of communication to your contributors and your player base as to how you can remedy the situation to actually make it fair for your most dedicated audience. Anyway, ladies and gents, boys and girls, that was it for today. Hopefully you enjoyed this tank review or is useful for you. If it was, give it a thumbs up. If it wasn't, give it a thumbs down. And let me know in the comments how many rentals or permanent Object 283s all of you out there have. And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.